Do you think that having a lot in common or feeling that kind of synergistic similarity you've both articulated is a requirement for a really wonderful, evolving, growth-oriented marriage?
I can.
Well, for us, I think so. For me, having somebody that had the same goals, a similar outlook on life. I don't know how couples do it when they have very different political views, religious views. I don't know how they do it. What else is there? You're talking about, we both have an interest in the arts and in music and theater and books and philosophy and religion. So we had, all that in common. Plus, our political views are very similar. Our views on, our children were grown up, but our views on, children and grandchildren were all very similar. So we were both, coming to it, as I said, as a second marriage and knowing what we didn't want, which was helpful. And I think both of us were mature enough to know what we did want, which was also very helpful.
Which decade of life were each of you in when you married?
I was in my 40s and Bruce was in his 50s.
Really? Yeah, I think I was 51 and you were 45. So yeah, we were, it's funny, Judy just made the cut age-wise in what I was looking for on J-Date, the Jewish dating service.
Yes. You don't know it from my last name because my father-in-law isn't Jewish, but we are Jewish too. I understand everything that you're saying.
Yes, I knew that of you, yeah. And it's interesting that I was looking for someone not far from my own generation. I was looking 45 to 55. That was the category I was in. And Judy, fortunately, just made the cut. She had just turned 45. Or no, I guess.
Yeah, like some older men, he was not looking for a 20 or 30-year-old.
Oh, God. No.
Well, that wouldn't have been the similarities bond.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the similarities thing, because you can sort of view it after the fact, because I work with lots of couples that do fine, where they aren't both, the same religion or the same, cultural background or whatever. Those can be tricky issues. But I think when you look at a couple that's doing well, there are some core things clearly that make them feel like they're in the same project. They're working towards something similar, even if they can't exactly articulate it. Because there's all kinds of differences. And look, we're not the same person. We weren't looking for clones of each other. We have different takes on things, but they seem to be sort of complementary rather than opposition. And the couples, when they work well, that's what they experience. They experience those differences as a gift as opposed to a challenge. And, conversely, couples, when they're not working well, every difference becomes a challenge.
Well, it's a fascinating topic. And one of the things which is underneath the question for me is this idea. I'm not sure if it's familiar to both of you or not, but either way, I'm going to say it so anyone watching is familiar with it, that it's often referred to as masculine-feminine energetics or masculine-feminine polarities, where one of the basic ideas is that in the 1950s, in a way that not in all marriages, but in many marriages was kind of toxic. The woman had her role, which was to have her makeup done and her apron hanging on the wall and dinner ready when her working husband walked in the door with a briefcase. And it was his job to not really feel, to provide, be taken care of, and have sex on Saturday nights. And it was her job to keep the home, feel the emotions, and nurture everybody in the home as needed. I'm obviously oversimplifying, but this is a way that we think of the 1950s. And then with the 1960s, all the power dynamic and entrenched roles really just changed. And obviously this isn't everywhere in the country, we know, but just as a general trend that then men have longer hair and cry and feel their feelings more, and women go to work and become strong. And there's a way in which, in this view, which this isn't my view, but it's a view that I encounter a lot, is then men and women are kind of neutralized and more similar, and parity and equality within the relationship equates to sameness, which has the effect of essentially eroding erotic chemistry. That in this view, erotic chemistry is contingent on there actually being polarity and energetic differences and identities that inform some tension and not all the sameness. And I'm not going to ask a question that's too personal, but it's obvious that the two of you have a lot of juiciness in your marriage and a lot of energetic, dynamic pep and pleasure. And so I'm wondering if you want to say, well, that whole idea of needing polarity and difference to create erotic tension is just wrong. I'm good with that. But otherwise, I'm wondering how you relate your lived experience and any thoughts you have to this approach, which is fairly common in coaching circles and new age circles, which really goes in a completely different direction to the lived experience that the two of you have.
Good question. I haven't really thought about that, but I think what it comes down to, at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, is that everything that Bruce does in our relationship, he does for us and to make my life better and easier. So whether it's helping or making dinner or doing the laundry or keeping, doing the household finances, asking me my opinions on everything, being really interested. People think, foreplay, it's in the bedroom, but no, it's not. It starts when he would come in and gives me a look or a touch, or will say, let me do that for you. It's those
I actually think in long-term relationships, everything which isn't sex functions as foreplay.
Here.
Everything. It either brings you closer together or pushes you a little further apart.
I mean, this morning I was baking and I had my gloves on ready to do the dishes, and he stepped in and I said, I was going to do that. And he just goes ahead and does the dishes.
I'll refer to my union contract. I'm sorry, but that's my job and I have to do that. That the polarity thing, we actually did a podcast on erotic charge because I like anything, and this is another one of my big shticks, I suppose. If you're over categorize anything, it gets dangerous. You know what I mean? You lose the meaning. Real life is more complicated.
I do agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. Having said that, there's some interesting research I've often referred to that I wish I had a more recent reading of, but it's maybe 10 or 15 years ago I read about it. Some of it done, we're in Vermont, and some of this research is actually done at the University of Vermont by women researchers, and I think it's important that it's women researchers. This is not talking about, the male gaze, so to speak. And they were talking about that very issue of polarity, that heterosexual couples, if you look at couples that are striving for, the couples that are in the rigid gender roles are unhappy. Generally, the women are pissed off and the men are upset that the women are pissed off or whatever. The couples that strive for egalitarianism tend to be less angry, get along better. One minor problem, their sex lives are dull.
Yes.
Except for a subset of them who report to the researchers that, actually we have a pretty lively sex life because we play power games in bed. So they do something that does involve that sort of, quasi-masculine feminine. I say quasi because it isn't always the man that's dominant and the woman that's submissive. But they'll do things that aren't about equality of power. And what they found is sort of a sweet spot on the average of 60-40, that they found that the couples that had the marriages where they reported satisfaction in all areas, including their sex lives, were the ones where the men did 60% of the traditionally masculine things and the women did 60% of the traditionally feminine things, and then 40% the other way. And that was because they're hypothesizing, indeed, if you're in a heterosexual couple, you're looking, men want women to seem like women mostly, and women want men to seem like men mostly. And that I respect that difference. I think that's important. And I totally think that plays out in our relationship. That sense, I remember when we met, I'm hesitating. I'm not going into anything about my past that would involve anything that anyone else involved wouldn't want me to be revealing. Let's just put it that way. All I can say is what I became aware of early on was how the whole masculine feminine thing is way more than just sex. It's about ways that Judy's response to the parts of me that feel masculine that I like, the very stuff she was talking about, that sense, when you were talking about how you like it that I stepped in there, I'm trying not to cry right now, that's that sense that she likes in me something that I like in me. And I think
yes, and also there's something so powerful in what you're saying, because especially from the outside, if someone were to judge, the focus could be on the fact that you did the dishes. But what I'm hearing for the two of you, even more significant, is that you stepped in and took charge. The fact that you took charge doing the dishes rather than taking charge and getting the car fixed is really not to the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she got carpet. Yeah. No, because Judy has commented on that too. If she sees me up like in her synagogue, if she's leading the choir, or you're doing a leadership thing, and she seems turned on by that. And it's the fact that she's turned on by that is such a turn on for me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, what she likes about me is the stuff I like. And the fact that she liked my help is it so works. And I think that is a masculine feminine thing.